Hi, Dan Verton, Executive Editor with Meritalk. We're here at the Akamai Government Forum in Washington, D.C., and we're speaking with Mr. Matthew Davis. Matthew is the Chief Information Officer for the Virginia Department of Elections. Matthew, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So, you have a very exciting job these days. Tell me what is happening at the Virginia Department of Elections from an IT perspective.
Well, we're preparing for quite a large turnout this November. We've already had our extremely high-profile primary back in March, and so we're gearing up now for the November election. We do have 2 other election days between now and then that we're also having to administer, so keeping busy.
What does it mean to gear up?
Just the sheer volume of requests, information are just going to skyrocket over the coming months as we move forward. So trying to make sure that our online citizen portal, which allows voters to look up their registration information and update their registration, and also to apply for an absentee ballot if they want to vote because they can't get to the polls on election day, making sure those systems are going to be able to handle the load and also just keep all that information secure.
Right. So the theme of this year's conference, safeguarding a dynamic government. I can't think of a more critical function than safeguarding the election results. Virginia does all electronic, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So what are your thoughts in terms of, or what are some of your biggest concerns in terms of how you go about making sure that that process remains secure?
So we spend a lot of time and energy on planning for contingencies, and so both federal and state law, as well as just our regulations and policies, have plenty of safeguards in place for example, a voter shows up to vote and is not on the poll books. For some reason, there is a provisional ballot process that allows them to cast a ballot, and we sort it out in the days after the election and figure out if the ballot should be counted or not. So we have safeguards like that in place. With election night results reporting, we're dealing with individuals who have been working a 16-plus hour day, and also other individuals at the election administration level who've been working 16, 18, 20-hour days for weeks on end. As we roll into that point. So mistakes do happen as we start transcribing results over telephone calls and the various methods our 133 localities use to get that data back to our system. And so we have report processes in place to try to track those issues, that try to deal with those issues as quickly as we can. We've had several very close elections in Virginia over the years, and nobody wants to see results shift on election night. But it is a very manual process and labor-intensive process, and we try to make sure that we stay on top of it as best we can.
So this is fascinating for me, and I hope for the viewers as well, but explain to us how the votes, where do they go? When I hit that button on that screen and I've cast my ballot, where does it go? And does it go to like one computer where there's a bunch of people just tallying up the votes? How does the system work like that?
So actually, this past General Assembly session, the General Assembly has voted in Virginia to require the replacement of all touchscreen systems in the Commonwealth by 2020. I think we have roughly 50 of the 133 localities are still using touchscreen systems. Everybody else is on a paper ballot. And so you vote basically a digital or optical scan ballot, your old Scantron kind of technology. That ballot is fed into a ballot tabulation machine at the polling place. Those machines are not networked for obvious security concerns that would exist, plus trying to get reliable networking connections into the 2,600 plus polling locations around the state is problematic. So at the end of the night, when the poll is closed and all the people in line have cast their ballots, those machines have tapes that print off, and there's a whole series of checks that go in to make sure that the number of ballots cast are the same as the number of ballots issued, and all those kinds of internal audit controls are run through. And then different localities kind of handle it differently from there. Most localities, the poll chief will pick up the phone and call the local office and say, okay, for this candidate, we got this many votes. For that candidate, we got this many votes. And then all of that paperwork and everything will be transported, again, varying from locality to locality, how it gets transported to the local office for official record.
That's fascinating, because what it sounds to me is that security for elections hasn't probably come as far as we all thought it has from electronic voting perspective. So you're telling me most of Virginia doesn't do the touchscreens anymore. We've actually gone back to it's a semi-paper process, right?
Yep.
And that's all because of the security concern?
Absolutely. So in a recount situation, having that verifiable ability to actually run the ballots through the machine again and get a new tally is really critical.
So that's a different issue altogether, right?
Yep.
Because if you don't have trust in the data the first time, you're not going to have trust in the data the second time for a recount.
Exactly. And in a touchscreen system, the way that Virginia had implemented those, the only thing to do was to go back and read the tape that printed off again. So your only thing you're going to catch in a recount would be a transcription error or a missed machine.
Right.
Whereas in a paper ballot locality, there are the physical ballots that could be reviewed or audited. And in fact, we actually had an audit after the last November election. One locality asked the state to perform an audit. We did one, and we got 100% accuracy on the equipment, which we were thrilled to see.
Right, right.
Because everything does go through a federal and state certification and testing process before it's deployed as well. But to actually have a post-election audit with 100% accuracy was wonderful news for the election community.
So, given what we just talked about, do you see this process evolving as technology evolves, or will we still have to, 5 years, 10 years from now, have to have this level of physical protection for the final vote?
Based on what I'm seeing and how slowly technology evolves in the elections world, I'm seeing that we will still be on paper for the next 5 to 10 years for voting purposes. There still are a lot. The big issue in elections versus a banking transaction or anything like that is maintenance of the secret ballot. So how do I ensure that that ballot is cast secretly but accurately? How do I trust what's been voted? A piece of paper, I can always go back, and we've all seen the images where there's two guys sitting at a table looking and saying, did the person intend to vote for this candidate or that candidate? So with a paper ballot, you can have that argument. Without it, you can't.
Well, hopefully the paper ballot has evolved, so we're not going to have that argument anymore, right? Hopefully
yes,
it's
we're definitely past the hanging chad.
Yeah, hopefully
issues.
they're on separate sides of the paper, but. Great. Matthew Davis, thank you so much. Matthew is the Chief Information Officer for the Virginia Department of Elections. I appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you very much.
I'm Dan Verton, Executive Editor with Meritalk. Thanks very much for watching.